All right, let's get started. Welcome to Magical Aging on the Awareness Ascending channel. And today our topic is quantum communication. And it's kind of a flavor of that, talking about communication, quantum communication with self and others. So as we magically age, we have to really resolve our conflicts and empower ourselves to truly communicate. And I am so excited to have, first of all, my daughter is here, Vanessa Rud, and she's going to be part of the conversation with our special guest and dear friend, Ashley Lee, who is a global energy master. So let me tell you a little bit about Ashley Lee. As an innovative and visionary thought leader in the field of advanced pediatric energy healing, Ashley supports and guides and facilitates children preconception through adulthood and their families to develop energy mastery. The mastery of energy illuminates all aspects of relationships to self, others, and the environment we create, and serves to navigate the full and authentic expression of our giftedness at all ages. So certainly as we're getting older. In the medical intuitive realms, Ashley demonstrates advanced physiological wisdom in facilitating physical healing with over 32 years of expert pediatric, neonatal, and cardiovascular critical care nursing, combined with multidimensional forms of energy healing, unifying the whole person, cognitively, emotionally, and spiritually. And with deep passion, mission, and purpose, Ashley is a steward and guide for multitude of child leaders who have already demonstrated a high level of self-realization and who seek support on their self-actualized journey in their physical world experience. And as a pioneer in pediatric healing modalities for children with multisensory and metaphysical abilities, Ashley creates an atmosphere where children, their siblings, and parents are able to explore and express their true selves through designing global energy mastery schools. So that's quite a bit. And what I'd love to do before I ask some questions is just to give you a little background. So my son and Vanessa's brother has been in the hospital for a while, and he was unconscious. He's just regaining consciousness. And when Ashley saw that he was sick, she reached out to me and said, what can I do to help? And so Ashley has been guiding us to communicate with him on the energetic level. And it has just been so helpful. And I might get emotional. And I know my daughter, we've both been just in this kind of limbo, wanting to accept whatever happens and also wanting him to make it here in the 3D reality. And we still don't know, but I am just so grateful to you, Ashley, for your gifts and wisdom and ability to help us with children of all ages. He's 43, so he's not an infant for sure. And I think it's all the same. And so what I would love for you to do, Ashley, is perhaps talk about maybe how you approach helping people connect with their loved ones when they're not conscious or when they're in utero, which I imagine it's similar, right? And how you help parents. And then we can kind of see where the conversation goes, because I definitely want to talk about your LEAP method as well, but I'll let you judge, if that comes in naturally, or maybe we can catch it later. So yeah, so welcome.
Oh, thank you. And thank you all. Thank you all for having the opportunity to join us all today in this opportunity to share on these deep levels of communication. And I know with Vanessa and Olivia, speaking with your brother and your son in that way is very unique and very special. And at the same time is universal, right? We have the opportunity to speak with our loved ones in body, out of body, before they come embodied, pre-conception, and then in utero, like you shared, and then also maybe when we're unconscious or we're in surgery or we're under medications where it's harder to communicate verbally, either through our vocal cords and our breath, and our voice, or through texting or email or other forms of writing as a typical way of communicating, or even nonverbal, right? Opening our eyes, smiling, to having different body expressions allow us to communicate. And then there are these other more subtle forms of communications. And for some of us, they're not that subtle. And for some of us, they're extremely subtle where they seem unnoticed. So those are the ability to speak brain to brain or telepathically. There's this idea of speaking empathically, heart to heart. And then there's this whole idea, which I look at because of the children in the intensive care unit and other areas that I've spoken with them, even at night while they're sleeping, is this idea of soul to soul, or this idea of spirit to spirit. And so we take the whole essence of ourselves, physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual, and connect with the whole essence of them, physical, mental, spiritual, and emotional and mental, all of those areas. And in those areas, we have an opportunity to create a wide variety of conversations and communication, right? And so we can talk on the physical plane to them. How are you feeling? How are you doing? What is your, what is your brain feeling? What is your lungs feeling? What is your heart feeling? All of those things. And then we can talk about, what are you thinking? What are you wanting? What are you desiring? As I sense when we become inspirited, right, as the Spanish word is, in spiritu, when we bring the spirit into the body, into the vessel, and then we start speaking through that vessel, we have an opportunity to incorporate and integrate all these different aspects of ourselves. And inside of that, then communication seems to open on levels that are deeper than just the metaphysical ways of talking about extrasensory perception or telepathy or empathy or other ways. And I know you two have been practicing in that realm, speaking with them, right? Because we don't normally think that we can speak to somebody who is challenged to wake up or is challenged with medications that keep us sleepy, those kinds of things. And we didn't know that we could speak to our loved ones that way.
Well, thank you. It's so powerful. And many of you listeners and viewers may know about me, but I was a data scientist for 30 years and I was really very left brain. And I have opened up a lot more around the right brain and connecting, but it's still kind of a challenge for me. So when you, Ashley, would say, well, what do you feel he's saying? I'm still trying to figure out, is it what I want to hear or is it really him? And I think that's a challenge for many of us. And I know, Vanessa, you're a better, I don't know if that's the right word, but you meditate and seem to really be able to do it more easily than I do. I'm curious, Vanessa, if you feel like you've connected with Brandon in that way, spirit to spirit, soul to soul, in all the ways that Ashley said. Has that been something you've felt like you could do?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, also, I just feel like Brandon and I have always had that connection. It was always been really close. Like we would always joke that we were like the same person. And like, it's interesting because even like astrologically, we're like flipped. Like he's a Virgo sun and a Cancer moon, and I'm a Cancer sun and a Virgo moon, and like things like that, or ascending, I forget. But like we have a flip like that. And so it's like we're very much the same. And then when we're not, we're like completely opposites. But like he's been my best friend since I was born. And like, so we've always had that connection. And like many times we're hanging out and I'm like, I'll say something and he's like, I was just thinking that, or vice versa. And so I feel like it was easy for me to drop in. Plus, like I've always kind of had a connection to that other realm and have like connected with past loved ones and things like that. And even with Brandon had like crazy experience where like literally like all of our ascended like family members were like in his house communicating with us. And I was like, I could like hear your brother and my uncle like laughing. It was super trippy, but it was awesome. And so it was it was actually easier for me to drop into that space with him remotely than to like physically be by his body. Cause like for me, like seeing his body the way that it is like really hard for me, but like in my mind and in my heart, I could like visualize him healed and connect with him and talk to him. And I was getting premonitions about this situation before it happened. So it was like when it started to happen, I was like, okay, here we go, you know? So it's been very interesting and very like same thing with you, Mom, what you were saying, like not knowing if it's him or me. But I think, you know, I've had a little practice with it, so it's easier for me to be like, yeah, that's not my thought. That's not what I, you know, came up with. That's definitely like coming from his energetic blueprint and not mine. And um, it's definitely like trippy because it does feel like you're just having a conversation with yourself in your head, but it definitely feels very different. And I'm a very like a highly kinesthetic feeling person, so it's easier for me to drop into that space and like accept that knowing and ride that wave.
Thank you.
So beautifully shared, you know, that space where you talked about where you had those past experiences with him and that validation with him live, you know, about your conversations together, and then the conversations that you're having etherically with other family members that may not be present in the field or in the immediate environment. And then you get that validation from him about what kinds of conversations you're having together. And those are huge. And at the same time, and you said his energetic blueprint, I agree with you. I sense when we come in embodied and we come in at preconception and we're coming down and we're getting gestated and we're growing inside mom and then we're birthed, we have some of these maybe soul purposes or soul lessons or soul opportunities, right, that we are here to experience. And then life takes us on these jaunts, right? I mean, we're here on a very, very precipice position on the planet right now, with humanity having the opportunity to rise above where it's been for thousands of years. And so at this precipice, I recognize our blueprints start to change as well during this lifetime. Like I'm really sure that my blueprint was some other blueprint than it is right now. I'm pretty sure, as people say, your script, right? And I've changed my script at least 43 times so far, seriously. And wow. So I'm like, I don't even know what that means anymore, a script. I'm just like following, because like yesterday's script is different than today's script. It's almost that fast. So in these times too, as we get to speak with these beautiful and spirited people, no matter what position or where they're at in their lives, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, they have an opportunity to see something different and to experience something different that they may not have known before, even in this lifetime. And so that's what I sense has been our journey with Brendan as well, is noticing what other, if you could call it scripts or blueprints, what other ones is he looking into? What is he looking into? What would he like to create? And what would he like to choose? And it's these opportunities that I keep experiencing more and more, even with little children calling me about having a cardiac challenge and maybe having to go to surgery or not, and other things. It's really getting to a shift and a change, even in just this year of 2022, about what would that spirit, that little spirit want, that big spirit want, the 43-year-old spirit or the 13-month-old spirit. What would they like, and how would they like to create their bodies, their lives, and their opportunities now moving forward? And I can see, Vanessa, you're tuning in too. What does he share with you in this moment, right? That sacred space that you share together.
I feel like, honestly, for the first time, he's like actually getting excited about the reality of him being a positive like influence in the world, whereas before he was very willing to just stay small. And you know, this feeling of always like waiting for something to happen so that he could be happy, instead of like, now he's like realizing like, oh, I can just be happy, and I can step into my life and like help. Because I know he's always wanted to help people. He's always wanted to like create spaces for people to be happy and feel healed and be able to like meditate. And it's funny, there's this one time when he kept being like, oh, I just feel like I'm supposed to like create worlds, and like it was coming from this place of like, oh, he wanted to like go to a different planet. And I was like, Brandon, you are literally creating worlds right here. I was like, look at your space right now. Look at your room. Look at your garden. Look at all of these homes that you've transformed. I was like, you're doing it. And he was like, oh, like he like it like hit him. And then later, like I hear him like in conversation with somebody else, and he's like, yeah, I just feel like I've come here to like, you know, like create the world and earth and like really be here. And I was like, oh, good. Like at least he's like choosing that and taking it on. Like it really like it warmed my heart that he like really took it on. It's like it really resonated him to the point where it was like his original idea from the beginning. I'm like, great, take it and run with it. And so I feel like he's really realizing that now he has like a greater mission that is ultimately what he always wanted, but he didn't really, you know, now he has like an even greater story and like rising from the ashes, this potential to really like inspire people to heal themselves regardless of like what is thrown at them. And I feel like he's a little bit scared to be completely open and authentic about what he's been through. But I think that he'll come to realize that part that is like the scariest to share is actually like what people need to hear the most.
I agree. Yeah, I think everybody out there that's a powerful speaker, the more authentic you can be, the more powerful I think you are. People want that authenticity and that vulnerability. And I really agree with you, Vanessa, that he had perhaps had to go through this to be able to be the powerful person. And like you're saying, Ashley, maybe he's rewriting his blueprint to get rid of all that victim stuff and all that, you know, blaming everybody else for the way things are and just come in powerfully. So we'll keep you posted as the Magical Aging Show progresses. But Ashley, I would love to hear you share a little bit about some of the ways that you have helped parents and babies prior to birth and perhaps right after birth to heal or make decisions that were on this powerful soul level. Could you perhaps share a few stories about that?
Well, sure. And, you know, one part to segue from what Vanessa was sharing about the opportunity to have an opportunity to self-heal is I sense many of us, you know, that's maybe older than a few months or years old, have come in with blueprints that needed karmic cleansing and needed soul contracts leaving and all kinds of things that we've been involved with, either to help the planet, or maybe sometimes we've hurt the planet or hurt ourselves or hurt others, and we're here to rectify that. And I've been seeing that commonly over the last 30 years of being in different realms of healthcare. And now I see a very big shift, quite honestly, that we have an opportunity to really let go of all of that karmic templating that we've experienced coming in, and the opportunity to really move through those levels of conflicts that kept us stuck, soul recycling back into this sort of I want to call it parasitic consumerism, this way of being in this me-centric world where we're now having an opportunity to elevate, to move beyond me, and move into us. And as I take care of me and you take care of you, together we come into this conversation, this experience, in this relationship full of love, not needing each other and choosing to be with one another. And so the whole premise of living and breathing and being here on planet Earth and with each other completely radically changes its perspective and its paradigms or its meanings in life. And that we have this opportunity. And in this process, then we move into, like Vanessa so eloquently shared, about this opportunity for self-healing. And we've been living through thousands of years of pulling people along, saying, come on, you can heal. Come on, you can heal. And Western medicine did it so well, where we can push people to heal, right? We can stick a tube in every orifice of your body and make your body work, whether you want it to or not. And you all have been learning about that. And I've been around that for 32 years. And there's a point in which where we can offer that and we can provide that. But how about providing opportunities where it's less invasive? Providing opportunities where we have an opportunity to recognize that our physical body and our cellular function interfaces with our consciousness. And when we recognize that it interfaces with our consciousness, and our consciousness is a myth or awry or out of place or gone south, however we want to call it, we have an opportunity to go, wow, I resemble that consciousness. That consciousness is challenged, it's discordant, it's fearful, it's whatever it is. And instead of like being vulnerable now, we can just, you're like we said, just be open and honest and go, wow, I'm having a hard time. Or wow, this is really challenging. Or wow, I totally feel like a victim here and I want to blame everybody for my victimhood. And then we can make laughter out of it and be funny with it rather than it being serious, dangerous, and terrible. And we're going to fight over it and kill each other over it. And so all of these radical changes are happening at the same time to help us shift in this idea that we can promote self-healing from within. And so making someone, pushing them to heal and demanding them to heal because we want them to heal, because we don't want them to go. We don't want them to leave. We don't want them to leave the planet. We want to love them and we want to be part of their lives. And when we shift that inside of ourselves, and then we shift that in the one that needs the healing, then they're present too, creating changes. Otherwise, they keep disassociating or saying, wait, it's somebody else's fault, or wait, I don't want that, or I don't want that food, or I don't want this thing. And I don't want to heal that way. I don't want to feel pain and suffering. And instead, when we're the person that's healing and we're having pain and suffering, we go, wow, okay, I'm having pain and suffering. I'm going to tune in. I'm going to drop in, like Vanessa shared so beautifully. I'm going to drop into that pain. I'm going to acknowledge that I have that pain. And then I'm going to say, what does the pain want me to do to support it healing or moving away? And then we kind of own it, right? So when we own our own healing needs, we have the opportunity to create self-healing much faster than making someone or dragging them to that healing space. So I wanted to start with that because I recognize that creates massive transformation. And at the same time, I also want to acknowledge that it's not necessarily super easy right now because we're all shifting that previous paradigm of it is somebody else's fault. It is something out there that made me sick or whatever, right? A pathogen or a food or a trauma or something made me sick and they're to blame. That thing is to blame. And we can say, okay, that thing was a catalyst for creating my illness or my situation. But at the same time, how did I bring myself into that environment to become affected by that or influenced or impacted by that? And so then when we start taking responsibility for our impact and our influences that we push out into the world and that we receive from the world, now our relationship, like you were talking about, our quantum communication, that relationship begins to shift and change. And the way that we relate in that level of communication starts to drastically shift.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That was. Go ahead, Vanessa.
I was going to say too that like I feel like the conversation of like the law of attraction and like everything in your life is like your attraction is become a very popular conversation, which I love. And I feel like in some way people are like taking blame. And to further expand on what you said, it's like it's not about taking fault for what's happened to you, but it is absolutely your responsibility to heal the aftermath of what happened to you, right? And so also to what you said, that like self-healing, in my opinion, is the only way to heal. And it's like if it doesn't like come like a fire through your soul, nothing's gonna save you. But like, and not to say that like you have to do it alone, right? So it's like, right. But it has to start with you. You have to drive the bus, right? But like you can bring anybody on the bus that you want, as all the doctors, alternative, functional, like allopathic, whatever it is, like, because I feel like it's like cooking, right? Like you're not going to just have one ingredient in your meal. You're going to have a multitude of ingredients, some more or less, more of this, some a little spice it up. You might try something and the next time you make it, you're like, that didn't work. I'm going to try something else. So it's like, it's about driving that bus and being like, okay, this resonates with me. And like, like I just, one thing that I would love everybody everywhere to know is that like you are your own doctor, your own healer, and ultimately like what happens to you is up to you. Obviously, if you're unconscious, you have somebody that you trust, but like, you know, in our situation, it's like we know what Brandon wants. We know his lifestyle and how he lives and like how he likes to do healing. So it's like we can make decisions based on that to support what he ultimately wants, right? So having that internal desire to heal, because especially too, like in Reiki 1, when Dr. Usui initially would teach it years ago, decades ago, he would teach Reiki 1 for 10 years before he would attune you to Reiki 2. And Reiki 1 was literally all about self-healing. You didn't work on anybody else until Reiki 2 10 years later. So it's like, and being able to heal yourself puts you in a power position within yourself that you can then help others, which is ultimately, I think, what people want is to be, I mean, like whether they admit it now or not, like I believe that people are inherently good and want to help people, and helping yourself is the first step to doing that.
Beautiful. Thank you, Vanessa. One of the things too, along with what you were saying, is that we did make decisions for Brandon, and Ashley so beautifully coached me to say, you could literally keep him alive forever, but you need to let him have some choice in the matter, that if he doesn't want to be here. And that was really hard to hear and also very empowering. And Ashley, you gave me words to say to him, like, I love you and I will love you whether you decide to stay in this planet or in this 3D body or not. You know, I will always love you. And that was hard to say. I mean, it wasn't like I wasn't going to love him, but it was almost, I had a fear that I wanted him to know that I wanted him here, but I didn't want him to hear if he didn't really want to be here. So that felt somewhat freeing after I got through the fear of it. But yeah, so thank you both. And so Ashley, can you then, share a little bit about some of your other experiences with healing in the pediatric ward? I think you have some amazing stories.
I have a question for Ashley, actually, if that's okay.
Okay.
I'm like, how, when you're especially working with like young babies that don't have verbal skills and people who are in a coma, like, how do you approach resistance? Like when you've experienced resistance within them, like what is your approach around that?
I think that's a fabulous question. And where I look to is like in that, when I approach the whole being. So I bring my whole being with me. And, I was energetically sensitive. I think like you were describing too, a little bit about being kinesthetically sensitive. And I was sensitive to being energetically profiled. So I think I would hide some of my energy acumen or energy ability or energy pastness of not this life, but maybe others and other things like that. And I realized, wow, what am I hiding from? And I have no idea. And it's kind of funny. And I think they're old stories from a long, long time ago. And so as I started to really peel that away and let myself being energetically vulnerable, so to speak, and being open that anyone can see anything related to whatever I've experienced and been through, a lot of that resistance then started to open up. So that was on my end where I got to open up my end of the relating when I connect. And then what I also did was I connected wholeheartedly without an intention or a drive or an agenda of my own, that I noticed that I got neutral and clear, and I was being present to the listening of what that being, that soul, that human being at this, what we're talking to is about, and what would they like to attend to. So for example, I have a story about a little child in utero, and she was diagnosed with a lethal disease in utero, and she was 19 weeks gestation, and they wanted to end the healthcare wanted to end the pregnancy because it was too severe of a situation to survive into being born and being a newborn. And so mom did not want to, and grandma did not want to. And so they went to many different healers, and they couldn't seem to get in or help the healing. And so there's that resistance in one way, right? So I sense, and this was years and years ago. Well, it seems like years and years, maybe it's about 10 years ago. And at that time, it was challenging for people for this little 19-week gestating fetus to get the support that she needed, and the mom as well. So I was remote. I was in Hawaii, and they were a family here in San Diego. And in that process, I recognized what was happening and what was going on. And everybody was focused on the brain of the little baby growing. And what was severe was the intestinal tract, so every cavity was bothered significantly by this disease process. And so I shared with the mom, and I said, well, nicely, it's not genetic, it's not Rh factor, it's not a very deep thing. It's literally allergies. And this child is highly sensitive. And so mom had a hard time really like, what do you mean it's allergies? And how does a fetus have allergies? And I'm like, I'm telling you, they do. And so she got off of wheat, and within 2 weeks, her pregnancy completely radically changed and went from a lethal pregnancy to a viable pregnancy. And within a few more weeks, it became a survivable pregnancy. And then so on and so forth. It moved into better and better realms of healing and health. And when I connected to the baby, when the baby's inflammation was down enough, and that the baby's cells could start to generate in a healthy way versus in an inflamed or stressed way, I asked, what would you like? I asked the little baby, I think she was around 21 weeks gestation at that time. And I said, what would you like to focus on? And she said, my head. I said, okay, I think everybody wants you to focus on your head, but can we focus on your heart and lungs first? Because you really need that too. And so we did. And so I helped her guide her energy. And I said, what kind of energy would you like? And it's funny because most of the kids pick rainbow energy, no matter what age group they are. It's really cute. And I said, you can pick any kind of energy you want, and you can pick multiple forms of energies. So she picked rainbow energy, and I said, I need you to help me help you. And she said, okay. And so that again is that bridge to self-healing, that even gestating babies, fetuses can start to contribute to their own healing process. So I imagine when we have a world where we're all communicating this way, and even we're the mom, or we're the baby, or we're the dad, or we're the healthcare provider, we can all speak to the gestating baby that way, so that they can start beginning. Just think about it. What would it be like to be a newborn, learning how to heal yourself before you even came out? Pretty phenomenal, right?
Great.
So that's one story that has opportunities when we move beyond what we've learned as true, and let go of what we've learned in the past, and be present to the moment, to seeing what's possible. And when we allow ourselves to open to those possibilities and move away from the conflicts or the negativity that we've experienced prior, maybe in even other lifetimes, because the veil has been thinning for all of us about this, right? We come in with these inner knowings, we have dreams, we have experiences, we have things, we have fetishes, we have addictions. We're like, how do we have that? That's not even part of my life. And so we don't recognize that those are patterns that we're here to heal, and we can heal them now very rapidly, stepping into our true nature. I think David has a question.
Oh, okay. Yeah, let me unmute.
Oh, go ahead.
Or did he put it in the chat? Or
No. Go ahead.
I just want to say thanks to all. This has been very interesting. And I send many blessings to Brandon and for his highest and best good, his healing. And I'm sure you all second and third that. And thanks for all the good information. I wanted to leave with the thought, I believe I'm meant to do healing work in the latter part of my life, and for myself and for others. And I've got my wife's former daughter she's in her mid to late 40s, and she's had drug addictions and with opiates and things. And I've been wanting to try to help, and my daughter has, but the the biggest challenge is, I think, when a person wants to go through life blaming others. It's like, wow, how do you change that attitude? So I'll just leave you with that thought, and thank you all.
Oh, you're
Thank you.
welcome, David. And just be sure to check out Ashley's website. It is leapofconsciousness.com so that you can get more information, because she's going to be teaching us how to do this kind of healing work. So, check out her website. She also has centerforconsciousawareness.org. I'm sure they're connected, but check them out. Thanks, David.
One thing I'd like to say to David's point is also to what Ashley said in the beginning of her answer to my question, which is a reminder to always look within. I asked her, what do you do when you experience blocks? And she immediately went to her own blocks, which is so important. So like, I would invite somebody, if somebody, if I'm like, sometimes I've had clients who are dealing with addiction, and I'm like, okay, well, this is a reflection of me in some way, whether I've processed it or I need to process. So I take that as an opportunity. Okay, I'm going to look at so I have my own addictions, and they can show up in various ways and not the obvious ways. So the best way to help somebody else, especially if they're right there in front of you and part of like your immediate life, is to do the healing on yourself and watch that ripple out elsewhere. And you probably get lessons or learnings that might help them, but ultimately you doing the work and her seeing that will inspire her to do it for herself as well.
Absolutely. I have so many wow moments when working with people. I go, I have something similar here. This is fantastic, right? And so then I do that inner healing even while working with them or speaking with them or being with them. I'll do my own inner healing, and a lot of my own inner healing is similar to this this leaf method that I have up here in the background. And it's this idea of, it's just a deep and profound conflict resolution process. And I recognize that when we don't realize that we're really functioning from two states of being, just basically and simply, it's either fear or it's love. And many of us get confused about the concept of love. We think that it's this ooey gooey, this amazing, blissful feeling of, warmth and safety when we're little kids, right? And we get our needs met. And then when we're big kids, we get to have other sensual experiences together and feeling loved. And when we search for that a lot of times, feeling whole, feeling supported, feeling that our needs are met. But there's this other space of love. I call it the precipice of creation, the 0 point, the God space. I call it where it's just this absolute peaceful space of no thought, no emotion. It's an existence of pre-conception or pre-creation. And it's where I sense when we all begin to solve problems or to create beautiful things in our lives, when we start from this space of absolute neutrality, being open to the whole universe, providing for us and with us in co-creation, magic and miracles and opportunities come forward from that space for us to move out and move into the space of actionable or inspired action and doing and being and embodying these ways of expressing ourselves through love. And that deep love that has no attachment to the outcome, that has no goals, no opportunities, no agendas, just everything is possible. Well, not no opportunities, no preconceived notions about what it is we need to have. And when we move all of that aside, so much of the abundant universe moves into our space or comes closer to us to share with us opportunities we may not have realized before. And that's what's amazing. Like, for example, with the story with the little baby that was in utero, who not only went from a death sentence, literally was dying in utero, to living and being birthed and growing and living now with her parents and her family and enjoying life in all the special ways that she came. She came very, very special to give special messages or to bring special messages to the world. And we don't always realize that or understand that, just like you shared a little bit about Brendan and the special message that he has for the world that had not been tapped into until these moments that are coming forward in his life. And when we actually take that leap of consciousness, go over that rainbow bridge, right? And join the metaphysical and the physical, and join all aspects of our beingness, then we have the opportunity to unfold the gifts that truly are inside of us, versus having to get that healing out of the way, get this healing out of the way, and be constantly on this healing journey, when we can at some point drop in, like you share so eloquently, Vanessa, and drop in and say, okay, in this moment, how would I like to be present? How would I like to be me? How would I like to express the giftedness that I am to myself and the world around me and all my relationships? And it can be relationships with physical things too, like our physical environment, our house, our home, our desk, our computer, our phone. It can be financially, it can be with food, it can be with physical relationships, it can be with etheric relationships, right? Our masters and the others and our descendants in the future, and our ancestors in the past. We have all these different ways to connect with the universe, to experience joy and love and sharing and caring in ways that we had never noticed before. And so when I experience resistances and I've cleared my own, then I kind of open up that pathway. And then when I connect with the other person or groups of people that I'm connecting with, what I do is I listen really carefully. I go blank mind. I go blank agendas. I let go of attachments to outcome. And when I let go of the attachment to outcome, I start to see and envision and experience, hear and taste and smell and all these different sensations. I begin to experience a different environment than maybe what I heard from that person before. Because a lot of times when they're awake, or when they're speaking to me, or when we're physically communicating, they'll say what they want us to hear, or they'll say what they want to hear, or they'll say what they want, versus maybe not really getting to the deeper aspects. And so sometimes when we speak non-physically or non-orally, and we speak heart to heart and soul to soul, some of those other elements and areas start to open up in the energy for that communication to be facilitated. And so that's what I said. So I had one instance of a little girl in the hospital, and she was 3 at the time, and she had a heart challenge. And it was very interesting because I had a chiropractic mentor, and I said, how do I speak to the kids when they keep trying to leave the body? Like, no matter what we try, they keep trying to leave. They're still leaving, and they still have all of these terrible situations go up. And I'm like, what is this about? So she said, why don't you whisper in her ear? And I said, that's a good idea. So this was when I was very much starting my practice, and I whispered in her ear, and I was brushing her teeth, and she was on the ventilator. So she had a tube in her throat, and I was brushing her teeth. And I said, what is it in this world that I can do to support you? What is it? And she said to me, or I said, what did I say? It was a long time ago. So I said, what is it that you can do to support me? That's what I did. I opened the channel for her to give the support. And she said to me, there's always hope. Now, what did she say? She said, you always have choice. And I'm like, oh, that's awesome. I'm working on that, having conscious choice versus unconscious choice or reactions. Then I said to her, what can I do for you? And it's silence. Like, I couldn't hear anything. I'm like, I'm listening. I couldn't hear anything. I said, okay, let me listen a little bit deeper. And I said, oh, I found it. So it's in her heart, right? We were helping her heal her heart. And I said, there's always hope. And
I just lost you. Is that
Lost
me?
the audio.
Yeah. Are you back?
I'll move to this audio. How's that audio?
That's great. Yeah. So okay, perfect. So you were
So
saying,
fascinating, right?
you know, how you have choice, I think is what
Yeah.
you said, into her heart. And
So
then
she
that's
got to
what
share
lost
with
you.
me, which I was working on, and she noticed that in my energy, soul to soul, that I was working on conscious choice and having a conscious choice in life. So learning about that. And then I got to share with her the opportunity that she has hope. And the hope is that she'll be loved, she'll be shared, her family cares about her. She had very, very deep social history that had very big challenges on that realm. And so it was amazing to see these differences of how we can connect with each other that we didn't know we could connect to before.
That's great.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about what you were doing? Or I want to hear about how you're doing the global healing now, kind of, not so much one-on-one, but really helping in a global sense, just in your presence, and then also how you want to teach others to do healing work. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, that's a great question. So the opportunity is connecting with groups. So I create and carve special time during the day, every day, to meditate for several hours, to connect with different groups on the planet. So one group may be the kids. One group may be kids with congenital heart challenges. One might be women. One might be women that are raising kids. One might be with, governments, geopolitical environments, banking environments, different environments, and connecting with those that are in charge of those environments and those that are participating in those environments. And then looking at what are the discordances or what are the challenges where there's fighting going on, misunderstanding going on, misinterpretation, and a lack of consensus. Because really, when we wake up in the morning, we don't wake up going, I think I'm going to be an a-hole today. I think I'm going to be mischievous. I think I'm going to be bad. So even when we call people nefarious or dark or not doing well, a lot of times they're functioning from a blaming aspect or a lack aspect, or they have significant, I call it consciousness challenges, which then are fear-based thinking processes. And they're built up over time. It doesn't happen, usually doesn't happen immediately. I mean, maybe if someone does a really bad act on someone else, and you might create an overnight vigilante, for example. But for most parts, a lot of these symptoms of our society has been groomed over thousands of years, and it hasn't been so positive. And so this idea of supporting the dismantling of conflict in larger groups is possible for our planet. And so what I utilize inside me is the sleep method. And I recognize, okay, so let's say I'm getting into a group. I don't know. Let's say my favorite one is vaccines, right? So I go into the group of who created the vaccine and what happened and why did we create it that way and what are we doing and why are we doing that? Is that really favorable for everyone? What is the purpose of the experimentation and, eugenics and other things that have been happening on the planet, to a point where how can we all work together to support one another, to recognize that we have plenty of resources on this whole planet together. And so what I do is I recognize the consciousness challenges that may be in these groups, that one could be considered the perpetrator or the conflictor, and one could be the victim and the conflictee, right? The one receiving the conflict. And then when I look at these two sides, kind of like those hands, and the energy going between it is this conflictual energy that's causing tension and stress and overwhelm and misunderstanding and an inability to communicate well with each other. So when we talk about this idea of quantum communication, we have this idea. So I presence myself inside that group, being one with the group, not separate from it. And I don't take sides. I don't look at one side being the perpetrator and one side being the victim, because to me, it's the same energy. It's just one is light and one is dark. And it's just this back and forth thing, and they're stuck to each other like Velcro. And when you peel off the victim from the perpetration, then the perpetrator, they're winning, right? They have the power, they have the money, they have the control. But they can't win if they don't have somebody to perpetrate against. And so if we heal victim and every victim on this planet completely of victim consciousness, then there's nobody for the perpetrator to play with anymore. They have to go figure something else to do. I support them in developing us-centrism and working together as a collective rather than as an individual, or it's all about me and my wallet and my power and my control over you. And so what I do is I work with the victims first to support them in emancipating them, and not emancipating them to protest or get mad or get upset or scream or yell or have a fight or kill them back, because then they just became the perpetrator. And that's what I see with helping all the babies running in with these soul templates of victim consciousness, because I'm like, we can heal that now here. All that happened in your previous life and you're coming in as a victim now, you can let that all go. And then several of them, being young babies, they even said, wow, the ones that I victimized in that previous life, they were perpetrators too. I said, yeah. And the circle goes round and round and round and round. And I said, so it's time for all of us in humanity to come off that samsara wheel of karmic debt and payment back and forth. So what I do is go into these infrastructures and these groups and support by releasing the conflicts that I witness inside of this happening. The fighting, the challenges, everything that's involved. Because many of us on the planet feel that we're incapable of making a difference. But actually we make a difference, just like you shared, Vanessa. We make a difference when we start inside of ourselves. And so when we change the way we see the world changes. But we have to do it for real. It's not just like see the world like it's not really there, or disassociate or deny or defend it or try to prosecute it. Instead, what we want to do is go, okay, you are the victim. How would you like to let go of that victim consciousness, move through it, and then be emancipated to stand in your true nature and your power? And then for the perpetrator, I see you. It's not great. We're not saying what you're doing is good, but we're also accepting it because it happened. You did it. Okay. And since you did it, how would you like to take care of it? How would you like to take care of it? How would you like to have interpersonal responsibility? Then you don't have to count on a healer or somebody to put you through the justice system or whatever it is that you feel that you have to do to receive punishment to have rehabilitation. Actually, the rehabilitation is a self-rehabilitation. We get to recognize it in ourselves. And so when we do get to emancipate both sides of that energy pattern that doesn't work for any of us, then we start to see ways of healing that we've never witnessed before in our physical bodies. And I've seen it unfold. And so what I do is I go in and I acknowledge, even as a witness, I'll go in and acknowledge the conflict. And then I'll release any self-judgments that I have. And I release self-judgments so that my mind and my body and my being can get super clear. And then I start to then, as a witness, I may have some judgments of witnessing this victim perpetrator activity. So then I let go of my judgments about it so that my energy, when it enters clean, it enters clear, it enters neutral. I'm still addressing it, but I'm not addressing it from a vehement or a negative energy or even a positive energy. I want to be super neutral and super peaceful, because when I'm that, compassion opens easily, effortlessly, and organically. You don't have to make compassion happen, and you certainly don't have to offer any forgiveness at that point, because you're releasing. Forgiveness is really only needed in the presence of a judgment. And so when we release the judgments, we don't even need forgiveness anymore. And then when we go in and then I look at the victim, for example, and I'll sort to emancipate them first, because if they stop playing the game, then the perpetrators have nobody to play with. And it renders the perpetrator unpowerful. It does right there in the energy. It's amazing to witness it. And so what I do is I go and I listen for their self-judgments. What are those? And what I do is I release it. I release it in me because I'm witnessing it. And I'm not going to reverberate it back and forth. I recognize it. I hear it. I validate it. And I'm going to let it go. Because I want them to get clear in their mind, in their heart, and their being, so that they can see something different than they've seen before. I let go of their judgments to the perpetrator, and it's a long list. And then when I let that go, then they start to see more clearly, oh, I don't even have to play with this. I don't even have to deal with this. I don't have to work with this. I don't have to address this. I can address that person, but I don't need to address this conflict. And then what happens is then I forgive myself for having any judgments in the first place. And what that does is I'm not forgiving myself as a being. I'm forgiving the judgments that I had. So it's not about the actions or the behavior. It's all about the thought processes that got me to that behavior. Mm-hmm. And so then I forgive the other one, the victim and the perpetrator, not for their actions or their inactions. I forgive them for the judgments that they had that brought them to those spaces. And then what I do is I proclaim sovereign. I'm sovereign from this condition in this situation. And I'm no longer a compete in this. I will no longer judge it. And if I find myself in the future judging the same kind of consciousness challenge, then what I'll do is I'll go through this process again and again and again until it's no more in me. And I can tell you when they were my own patterns, I went through a lot, like hundreds of times. But I was committed to fully doing that, being present as a neutral observer. And the neutral observers, and when we make lots of us, create lots of us around the world, we start to heal the world. We really do.
Beautiful. We're just about out of time. So I just want to say thank you so much and remind people of your website, leapofconsciousness.com and centerforconsciousawareness.org. So please go and follow Ashley. And just in closing, is there just a couple of things you might want to share with the viewers just to, inspire or just final words?
Well, I would love all of us to give some final words, and I'll share with, I'm grateful. I'm so very grateful for all of you. I'm so grateful for this platform to be able to share. And I am so grateful for all of the listeners that came to listen live and pre-recorded, to really know that inside of yourself, you can activate the self-healer in you and really come forward and be all of who you are, to experience joy and love in your world and our world together. Vanessa, what would you like to share?
I would say that true sovereignty, power, freedom, and joy comes from taking radical self-responsibility for your own healing. And with that, you can ask for help.
Yeah.
Beautiful. I can't really think of anything profound to add. Just so grateful and so feeling so much more empowered to just find joy in whatever the outcome is, not being attached to anything, but being in that place of an open heart, feeling love for whatever happens. To me, that's really the freedom. And as you were saying, Ashley, earlier, that the veils are thinning. So if we do lose people to this physical realm, we'll be even more interacting with them, or more easily interacting with them, I think, in the future. And so that really is exciting to me. So again, thank you, Ashley. Thank you, Vanessa. And I just am so grateful that you joined us for Magical Aging on the Awareness Ascending platform. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.